Hello, welcome to our channel. Today we will share the plight of a woman who has gone through much misery in life due to traumatic childhood and abusive husband. Let's hear the story from our main character. I am a 38 years old beautiful woman. I was always fond of myself. I was admired by those around me. My self-confidence is at its peak. But I was stuck in a very wrong marriage for a long time and I was suffering psychological pain. Seeing that other people had gone through the same pain alleviated my pain a little bit. Let me tell you about myself from the very start. I was born into a poor family. My parents frequently had a conflict and were not getting along well. I was the only child in the family. I always wanted to have a sibling who would support me in my difficult times. When my parents were in this turmoil, I wanted to have someone who would hug me and comfort me. I had a baby doll that I thought of as my younger sister. The doll had blue hair and was quite large. It was our family friend's present to me. Someone who loved me very much had brought it from abroad. I still remember this baby doll. Whenever my parents got into a fight, I would take it off and hug it. I would sleep with it every night and tell it about my pain and suffering. I always thought the pain would pass, but it never did. After many years of conflict and fights with my father, my mother couldn't stand the pain anymore and passed away suddenly. I was 15 years old at that time. I witnessed the violence my mother was subjected to for 15 years. I was angry with my mother, constantly questioning why anyone would tolerate so much humiliation and pain. Was it worth staying in a violent relationship? Why would anyone waste their life for the sake of an abuser? I always judged my mother. I still judge her. It's true that she might have been desperate and didn't have any other choice. But why do women tolerate violence and rape every day? I never understood this. I will never understand it. After my childhood trauma and years of mistrust of men due to my father's actions, it was understandable that I wouldn't have a healthy marriage. After my mother's death, I started working. I didn't get to go to school. I was left alone in this world with my father. I kept yearning to meet our family friend who had gifted me my favorite doll. He was living abroad. I prayed that he would come and rescue me from my father someday. But he never did. I waited so long. I thought of him as my guardian angel, as the only person who could make me happy in this world. I have never met him since then. I hope he is well and happy. I was lonely. It's interesting that every time I want to talk about my life, I end up telling about my parents and my childhood traumas. I started a job as a clerk in a store. How would I know that I would share the same fate with my mother? It was a small store in the middle of the street and it was selling women's clothing. My boss seemed to be a quiet, agreeable person. He was nice to me. But turns out, behind his calmness was a terrible personality. As if he had two personalities. He was suppressing his feelings as he was scared of his father. Just like me, he also had traumas and a problematic childhood. It was a match made in heavens. But Pedro was worse than my father. He was such a pervert, always staring at my body. Once we were left alone in the store. He was drinking. While packing clothes there, I heard him whispering to my ears, "I want you to be mine." There was no one around, he was drunk. Suddenly, he grabbed my arm and told me we would be going to the basement to do some work there. I realized his intentions were evil. But I couldn't resist him. There was no one around who would hear my voice. Even if I screamed, no one would believe me. They would blame me. Pedro grabbed me by my arm and pushed me downstairs. I let him take me downstairs without saying a word. At that moment, he pushed me against the wall and forced himself into me. I couldn't raise my voice. I couldn't even say a word. I was numb. Pedro had me. Believe me, I didn't know how to feel. I felt helpless. Pedro's good looks were gone in my eyes. That nice person was replaced with a monster. I was disgusted by him. As I already said, I had no one to help me, and most probably, people wouldn't believe that he had raped me. If you desire me so much, why don't you marry me? I told him. You mean you will be mine? He asked. Yes, I responded. I had no other choice but marry that monster. We got married. My father was very happy that I married him. He was happy to get rid of his burden. Now that you got married and left, there is no one in this world for whom I am responsible anymore, he told me openly. I'll take care of myself. Don't worry about me, I told him. I was wondering how my fate would be had my mother been alive. But then I realized her presence wouldn't change anything. It was as if they regretted that I was born. Probably my birth was the result of my father's rape on her. My father couldn't show his love or affection to me. Ever. Today I'm experiencing the same fate as my mother. I'm raped by my husband. I have surrendered to him and given up on my own life. Every day, he would come and have dinner that I prepared. Then, without saying a word, he would rape me. This misery lasted for several years. After a while, I had a son. But my son had a different childhood than me, as I loved him and took good care of him. I have good news for you. Finally, I got rid of Pedro. He died after getting into a fight in a pub. He was stabbed to death by 5 drunk men. Hearing this news, I didn't know whether to rejoice or to mourn his death. The vicious monster was gone. I experienced a strange feeling of peace. I'm happy now. I wanted to share my story as a reminder that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Never give up on your life. I know that sometimes life is unbearable, but believe me, there is no rainbow without rain.